Well, hello. Good day, mate. Bonjour. Guten Tag. Buenos dias. Ni hao ma. Te kai tau. Annyeong haseo. Well, welcome in English, Aussie, French, German, Spanish, Cantonese, Lithuanian, Korean, and my apologies to all those people who are mispronouncing. Anyway, we're here in Englewood, Florida, a drinking village with a fishing problem. And that's my buddy Marty's boat. As you all know, boats are a hole in the water that you pour money into. And this one, we're going to try not to put too much money into this. Marty needs a tilt trim motor, and it's going to be obvious to you in a second when you see it. There's a big problem between steel and salt water, and this is what happens. That's pretty ugly. It's amazing it was still working. And it was working when we lifted up the motor and locked it in place and then removed the pump. But we'll show you that later on. Actually, not the pump, the motor, which is sitting on top of the pump, the reservoir. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. And we'll hopefully be able to save you some money, whether you do it yourself or whether you hire a professional to do it. We're going to do it ourselves. And hopefully help you to save yourself a great deal of money for such a simple little task. Here we go. Well, if your tilt trim motor looks like this, it's been pretty bad. It's amazing this thing actually worked. Of course, we had to tap it gently with a hammer, but that's what happens to steel. It doesn't play well with salt water, and when you've got steel against aluminum, the steel goes. That's why you have sacrificial zincs on the boat. They corrode away and sacrifice themselves so expensive aluminum outboard doesn't go away. Anyway, whether or not you want to do this yourself or have a professional do it, you've got to get a new motor. Marty called around to the marinas around here, and it was about the same price, around $380 for that unit. It's funny, the smaller ones are more expensive than the bigger ones. Well, I poked around online and found a company, DB Electrical, that have an aftermarket pump, and on Monday early I ordered it, got it late Thursday, free shipping. If you want it earlier, you can pay a few bucks more, but it only costs $193 and change instead of $380. Quite a difference. Now, you need to know your model, make, year, in order to get the right part. You find that information on the side of the motor here. There's the year and month, April 5th, April 05. And there's the model number, F40TLR. Write it down. I found this website, DB Electrical, and found the part. As you can see, that's a matchup for the year, make, and model, and as you can see the price, $193, and the shipping is free. If you're not in a hurry, you can add some $8 or whatever to speed up the process, but I ordered it early Monday and it arrived in the afternoon on Thursday. So $193 as opposed to $370, $380 is a big difference in price. Here is the new motor. The bolt pattern is correct. The casing itself is heavier than the original one, and that's a nice thing. But as I will want to do, it had a good powder coating, and the wires are sealed up very nicely, the leads. The only problem is it came with this sheath that's an abrasion protection, and I'm going to have to cut that off. Also yesterday, I gave it an extra coat of paint. Why? Because I had a can, and I hit the seals at the top with a little flex seal. Why? Because I had it. Not going to hurt. So now I have to carefully cut this abrasion sheet off. I'm going to ask the people at DB Electrical if they might mention to their manufacturer in Taiwan not to put this on, because it'll keep the line from being threaded through the motor. As you can see, I cut the abrasion sheath off. You got to be very, very careful. It's very easy to cut too deeply through that, and then you'd cut through the sheathing on the wiring. You don't want to do that. Be very careful. It's very easy to go through it with a very sharp razor knife. Like I said, I'm going to ask the people at DB Electrical if they could have the manufacturer not put that on. Well, like I said earlier, show you, you got to lift the motor up. Now either with the pump, or you can do it by hand, and then lock it in place, and then lower the piston, take the pressure off. Up in there is where the piston goes. This hole right here gives you access to put a long screwdriver or a drift pin, but first you have to take a split ring pin off of that holds the pin in place, and then you can tap it out. But if it doesn't go easily, you've got too much pressure on the pin, you got to lower it, juggle it around, and then it should come out pretty easily. I sprayed it with some PB Blaster first, and it did come out very easily. Now I'm going to have to cut this wire, because I'm going to tie the new wire onto it so I can feed it, pull it through, because it goes up there into the casing and goes around the front and connects to the switch on the opposite side of the motor. So I'm going to do that now, but when I cut this wire, that oil is going to, this whole unit's going to tip down, that rest of that hydraulic fluid's going to come out of there, so I'm going to catch it so it doesn't go on the ground. Now that I've got the old motor off, you can see that they're different. The casing on the new one is a lot thicker, and it's one continuous piece. The old one, thin at the top and attached to the base. Now in this bag you see the O-ring that will go on the bottom of the motor, and the split ring that held the pin to the ram, and the 4 Allen head bolts that hold the motor in place. Now everything is metric here in the Yamaha, so you've got to have that metric, the correct metric size Allen wrench to take those bolts loose. You cannot wallow out one of these by using the wrong size. You'll be in big trouble. Be sure you use the right size. Be sure it's properly seated. Now, you can see into the bottom of the reservoir now, and right in the middle is a little square key. Now, as you can see, the end of the motor has a spline shaft on it. Well, what connects the spline shaft to that square piece at the bottom is this little plastic piece, and there's a spring that goes inside of it. So when you go to put the motor on, you have to put this piece on top of that little square protrusion down there with the spline and the spring inside. You got to have it straight up and down, and you got to make sure it all seats properly. Otherwise, you start again. You have to have it straight up and down in order for that to stay in place. So you just tie it up, or have somebody hold it up. Now also, don't forget the O-ring, but but I'm going to clean this surface up. It's got some grit on it before I install the motor. Now, as you can see, I tied the piston back with a little wire, got it upright, and I've got that little plastic piece with the spring in the center. I felt my way around and got it set on top of that pin, and now I'm going to carefully set the motor into the spline end, into that spline plastic. I'm going to do it very carefully. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the manual release. If your motor is not working, you just turn the screw head in there, and Yamaha, smart people, show you which way to turn the screw to release the pressure from the piston so you can move the motor manually. You might want to exercise that every once in a while so it's loose enough that it doesn't get frozen when you need it. Okay, I'm going to do that now. I forgot to mention the O-ring. Now, if your O-ring isn't perfect looking, go get a new one. And in order for it to stay seated in the groove in that motor, I put grease on it. It's also a good idea so it slides. Usually with gaskets or O-rings, you usually use some oil or grease. I use grease because it'll hold the ring in place when I turn the motor upside down to place it into the base. Okay, I got the motor all lined up. Took a little jiggling around, took my time, everything lined up, dropped into place. Okay, now here's one of the bolts. It's a hex head, and that's the 5mm Allen wrench that fits it. Be sure the holes are cleaned out so that the Allen wrench will seat properly. I'm going to go ahead and install the bolts. Now, just with any type of bolt pattern, you need to alternate tightening. First that one, then that one, then that one, then that one. Make sure they're all torqued the same. Don't tighten one all the way down before the others. Now, before I run this wire, fish it through there and around inside the motor, I may just fill the reservoir up and attach the leads to a 12-volt source to find out if there's anything wrong. And, oh, by the way, this is the bolt to fill the reservoir. Another metric size wrench or socket, and you'll have to have the motor up and maybe even the nose of the boat, if it's on a trailer, down to top off that reservoir. Alright, so I removed the plug to 17mm and I filled the reservoir with power tilt and trim fluid, or trim and tilt, you say tomato, and replaced the plug and snugged it. And I ran the leads over to the battery and put one lead on the negative, one on the positive, test, and the motor ran and the piston went up and it went down. Okay, so now we have to fish the wire through. That's going to be a bit of a problem. Now it goes up through that hole and tight around the front. It comes around to these terminals. Now I pulled the covers, the rubber covers protectors off. You see one is green, one is blue, and there are two. One goes to this switch and one goes all the way up to the helm, the switch on the throttle lever. Now, Got to figure out which is which. Pried back this strap, and I'm going to get up inside the boat and see if I can trace them out, because I don't want to pull the wrong one. I took the rubber covers off the wires, the double sets of wires, and feeling around underneath, I figured out which lead came all the way around to this side. The other one comes out the front of the motor and goes up to the helm. So by pulling back and forth on it and touching, holding on to the other end, I figured out which one. Now I'm going to go grease these wires up, attach the new wires, and see if I can pull them all the way through here. Because if you don't, it's going to be a nightmare fishing it through. Now, as you can see, I slit the cover about 3 inches, and I shortened the one wire inside and ran the other wire through the 2 connections, tied it off with a zip tie, cut that short, and now I'm going to try and wrap this around that whole concoction, maybe with some electrical tape. Now I've greased up the rest of it so it'll go through the holes, slide through there better, and we'll see. I'll have to get back up in the boat and pull it through. I'll try to, hopefully. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Okay, all taped up, all greased up, and ready to rock and roll. Memory card on my other camera quit. Anyway, I was successful in running the wire through. I was happy with myself, except I didn't put the wire through the hole. So I had to pull it back, disconnect it, reconnect it again, and run it through one more time. Second time wasn't so difficult. Okay, so now, well, there's the old wire. Everything's connected. Green on the top, blue on the bottom. Don't forget the booties. Up, down. So now, greased up the pin, greased up everything. That's the split ring. You got split ring pliers, or friend has, borrow them. If not, you can usually push it on with a screwdriver. I pushed the other one off with 2 screwdrivers. Okay, so this should all push to slide easily. We're going to use the hydraulic system to try and line this up. I might just pull that pin all the way out so I can eyeball it, take the wire off. Okay. Okay, well, you'll notice sometimes that the piston will twist at times, so you might need to straighten it out so it slips back up into the spot, and then just kind of slowly go up and hold the pin in place, and if you're lucky you'll pop right in there, and then get the ring on. And then finish up by tidying up, putting on zip ties. Finish the process. Nice and tidy. Okay. Here we go. Sorry. Release the pin. Oh, not quite yet. Yeah. Come on, baby. I think Marty needs to put some more grease on this. It needs a little persuading. Oh yeah, that needs some more than grease. That needs some PB Blaster and some WD. Don't let your stuff get like that. Use lots of lubricant, lots of grease, oil. That's save you a lot of grief in the future. All right. to my ears. Alrighty then. Job well done. I may take the plug out and make sure that the reservoir is full. It's a good idea before you put it back in the water. Also, it's a good idea to put the plug back in. But that's another story. Next we'll talk about changing the oil in this puppy. The plug is right up there. So for now, adios. Ta-ta. Cheerio. Bye.